why are you at an event for depression and emotional distress?
Yeah, it's the question I keep asking you. And as Barry said, it's not just a small part of my concern about being here. Why am I here? And I've asked Barry that a number of times, and he keeps saying, trust me. And what I do know about Barry and the relationship that we have is that it's worthwhile trusting him. So why am I here? Barry tells me it's to provide a perspective. I feel very fortunate. Discussions with Barry, with other people who've suffered from depression or other challenges in their lives, and there's definitely a part of me that cannot relate. I feel like I've won the lottery a number of times in my life. I was born in Canada. Felt like a pretty good place in the world to live. I was born into the family that I was, and we were financially secure. Had a great family. I have 3 sisters. Met my wife at a fairly young age. She's up here in the audience, as well as my 3 boys. And have had a great life. I've been successful in business. I've had good relationships. And so I talked to Barry and I talked to others who had challenges in their lives. And intellectually I can understand, but I know that I've never been there from the inside. And that's probably the big reason I'm sitting here going, what the heck am I doing here? It's a very different perspective.
So I get that. And our event, even though we call it the Depression Confessions, we're really talking about living life well. So, and I see it in your life. I know your boys. Oh, just to backlook. Dan and his sons volunteered for another event I had 3 years ago. We called it...
Father and son.
Yeah, something to do with what... the phenomenon of men, what we yearn for and from men. So we had Dan sit up at the front, and Fife and Will sit there and gossip about their father in front of an audience. And yeah, Dan was a little uncomfortable.
Barry's pushing me out of my comfort zone, as you can tell.
But what I saw was competency. This family works. Whatever this man is bringing to his family is working. Our event is about getting life working. So, yes, even though Dan hasn't had some of the challenges that maybe Elnur and I have had, to me it's almost irrelevant. What you bring to your family, it's obvious. What you brought to business has worked for you. What you brought to me as a coach has been very powerful for me. And there's another aspect here. A lot of us who are in the pit, we tend to create distance with people who aren't. So this is a perfect opportunity for me, to invite anyone here or in the audience to think about what you're passing on if you create distance with this man because he hasn't suffered. I know for me, it was easy for me to do that. I mean, how can I be with this person? They don't know where I've been. And that approach, that perspective does not serve me very well. I would argue that if you had this guy in your life, it would be a very good thing for you, whether you've been in the pit or not. And then I think that's it. I think we're talking about emotional life and getting life working. It's working for Dan. So to help build some contrast and to paint a picture of how our lives different, anything more before I go on, Dan?
No, I'll jump in as we go. You're going well.
Okay. So, Dan, did you ever have... Did your children ever have to ask their mother to protect them from you?
No, not that I'm aware of.
Okay. Mine did. Were you ever emotionally abusive to your family?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. I was. I didn't know that I was, but I was. have you ever punished your children or a child when they were desperately afraid? And I mean, I know the answer to this. I'm just gonna run with this. When I wasn't doing very well, it didn't manifest just in depression. It manifested in how I treated other people. So I was driving a snowmobile and my daughter was behind, and we just brought her from we just moved from Montreal, so she wasn't a country girl. She didn't know how to hang on to a snowmobile. I was weaving back and forth. We're pulling someone on a snowboard. She slipped and she threw her hands under the tunnel of the snowmobile. I turned around and I thought her hands were in the track. So instantly I was terrified, but instantly that vulnerability of being concerned about my daughter switched into anger. So instead of comforting her, I pulled her off the snowmobile and slapped her ass, and she was already terrified. So that's another aspect of how our lives differ, and how this inability to live life well impacts other people and ourselves. Because I felt terrible about that for 30 years, and I talked to my daughter about it 5-6 years ago. She doesn't even remember it, but I'd be just grinding away with this for all that time. And then one more aspect, just to create some contrast. When I was a young man, I was so invested in being shut down emotionally that if a beautiful woman with her lights turned on walked by and smiled at me, I'd be instantly angry with her. This is a bizarre thing. It's not good for romance, but it just shows you when this part of me is not doing well, how bizarre, how it can interfere with the things that I was born to love. And that's why we're here tonight. This is working for me now, and for much of my life it wasn't. And there are things that I did and things we can all do to make it work for us. Anything you'd like to add to that, Dan?
I guess one thing to say is you described the situation that you're in. And I've been in those situations. My reaction was different. But that anger that you get when you're scared is a very normal, natural one. And I think that maybe where the difference was, the outcome for me was not to turn to a physical response. But the internal challenge was similar.
Okay.
You know, I'll describe the situation. We were down in Panama, Ecuador, and we were in a treetop sort of climbing situation, sort of a trapeze. We're up on this catwalk, and one of my sons, who will remain nameless, we were walking along, and he sort of clipped my wife's foot to make her trip. You know, it's sort of fun to do when you're on the ground. We were about 300 feet up in the air, and the thought going through my mind of what could have happened, and the anger was very, very instantaneous. I guess the difference is we just sort of stopped and talked about it, and my son was very aware of how upset I was, but that's where it ended.
Right. You didn't carry this for 40 years like I did.
No, but I do remember it once in a while.
So Dan and I are here to talk about coaching. And we're both familiar with the coactive model through the CTI community. And we'd like to discuss that a little bit with you guys right now. So Dan, what is coaching? And why are you a coach?
Good questions. Coaching means a lot of different things to different people. The coaching that we're talking about is not the hockey coach. It's not looking at someone and telling them how to make improvements in form or strategy on the ice or technique, etc. The coaching that we're talking about is helping people make change. Most of us have challenges in our lives, and some larger and smaller, as we've discussed. But there are always choices that we have to make. There's always challenges. How do we get from where we are today to where we would like to be? And the coaching that we're talking about is assisting in the process to help somebody move from where they are today to where they want to go. And it's not telling them how to get there. It's asking them questions so that they can help make the right decision for them. All of us are unique. We have our own histories, our own paths. It's not appropriate for us to be telling someone else how to change their life. But where it is very powerful is that we can ask some questions that allow you to dig a little deeper into what's important to you. Maybe some questions you've never asked yourself before. Maybe you've been asked before, but you've never wanted to admit the answer. And a coach will bring that out. And in doing that, you start to peel back some layers and find out what's really important for you. And that allows you to then move forward and make some decisions to take you to that place of change. So that's what coaching is for me. It's helping somebody dig in and understand what's important to them, and then how are they going to make the change to move forward. How do you see it?
Yeah, very much the same way. So an assumption we make is that you're not broken. There's nothing to fix. You're naturally creative, resourceful, and whole. So that's our foundation in coaching. So right away, the coach isn't having to, really the journey is for the coachee or the client, whatever you want to call them. And if they want to move quickly, they can move quickly. If they want to go slowly, they move slowly. But if there's not change in coaching, and if there's not change quickly, you either got the wrong coach or you're not coachable. So you don't have to be engaged with a coach for 6 months waiting for some sort of result. You should either fire your coach or have the coach fire you if you haven't started making some changes. I'm thinking in 3 sessions, something needs to be start moving. And I know as a coach for me, my style, another way to separate coaching from psychotherapy is psychotherapy will dig into the past, and we don't. In fact, when I do an intake, I don't even really ask for the basics about work and family stuff like that. That'll come up in the coach call if it needs to. I really focus on what's here right now, and the most powerful question I can ask is, what do you want? And that it's about that simple. To be with somebody in a very, very sacred, like the privilege that I get to walk with people into the most private moments, it's a beautiful and wonderful experience for me. And especially if they can engage with what they discover there and roll. So yeah, that's, and one more mark for me is, if you're not experiencing some discomfort in your coaching calls, that's a mark to me. The calls need to be lively, and when we're looking at change, I think there needs to be discomfort. So I know that's a tough sell, but that's how we move through resistances and stuff, is to learn how to be with our fear, our discomfort, and actually get to a different way of living and seeing the world.
One of the phrases we use or descriptions is saboteur, and a saboteur is part of you that wants to hold you back and wants to hang on to the status quo because that's what you know. It can be safe, even if safe is not safe in everybody's definition, but it's safe in that you know what's happening and you know what the expected response is. And when we talk about discomfort, it's moving outside of that area that you know. And the saboteur is constantly trying to hold you back, and you have to subordinate the saboteur and just say, no, I want to move forward. And it's very challenging, but that definitely puts you outside of your comfort zone. One of the other pieces for me in terms of coaching is that the client wants the coaching. There is a commitment, a desire to be coached. I've done a number of coaching within an organization, and even within the organization, my philosophy was I didn't want somebody's manager or leader come to me and say, I want this person to be coached. That's great that a leader might feel the person could benefit from coaching, but from my perspective, I say, please go back to them, talk to them about the opportunity of coaching, and if they choose to be coached, I would love to coach them. But it's that commitment, that willingness that you want to make change that will allow you to get there. I'm not going to sit on the other side of a table or beside you or on the other end of a phone and try to coach somebody that doesn't want to be coached. It's a waste of their time and it's a waste of my time. So there's that initial desire, commitment, and the willingness to be pushed outside your comfort zone.
Yeah. So we tend to want to characterize the saboteur as a bad guy. And yes, the saboteur will always position itself between the person and what they love. It just does. But it's there to protect you. So if I call him Sabby, just lighten up a bit. He's actually, if you learn how to use your saboteur, he will point you to where you need to go. He'll use fear, or she will use fear. But this construct, it lives within you. It has full access to your cognitive and emotional resources. So this is the ultimate inside job. But rather than fight the saboteur, just play with them. And he will always, or she will always point to where the gold is every single time. So yeah, the saboteur can be an obstacle and it can be an ally. And the other thing, I'm just going to throw it here for some practitioners who might be watching, is the geography of a one-on-one coaching call is sort of oppositional. It's like the Montreal Canadiens versus the Toronto Maple Leafs. Nova and I have experimented with Selena, and Elnur, and a friend of mine from Toronto, where we did 3 people on a call. So the geography of the call had now changed. The saboteur didn't know what to do with us because things were happening and almost irrelevant. We sort of sidestepped the saboteur. So I won't speak more to it now, but it's definitely going to inform this 3-month group experience that I want to create after this event, where we use that geography in a group experience, because the saboteur, it was effortless for me to be on those calls as a coach, whereas a one-on-one call, especially in the early days, there's a lot of effort that has to go into resisting the saboteur. So anything else on Sabby?
No, I was just, a question I have, and maybe useful for some people who've not experienced coaching, is what's a typical process? What typical happens in a call for you?
Well, first of all, I've coached people that I've never met and I'll never meet. It's all done over the phone. I coached a guy in Amsterdam, and it worked perfectly. It's a conversation. In the case of 2 people, there's a coach and a coachee, and we drill down on what they want, and we work through perspectives. There's a powerful part of the coactive model that we call balance, but it's a profound perspectives piece where we get to get a clear picture of sort of the metaphysics, or the belief system or perspective of how a life is being driven, especially around the biggest resistances. And there we go through an exercise where we generate different perspectives and then have them pick a resonant perspective. And when I talk about resonant, I'm talking about the nervous system engages and the body tells us that there's something going on. Selena, who's in the room here, Nova and I walked her through an experience and had her commit to it. And, there's often tears, there's shaking, there's, the nervous system is engaging in a powerful way. And for some people, if it's their first time around, they can actually be frightened by the process, because now we're engaging with the nervous system directly. And it's quite a gentle process, but for people who haven't experienced change in, let's say, 40 years, and suddenly the biggest resistance in their life is starting to shake loose, guess what? There's going to be some pushback. So we have to normalize that experience. And in the case of Nova, who's going to be up, we're going to invite her right away. She might have, in her earlier part of her journey, her process with me, she would have a hangover for 2 days. She would you know, there was all kinds of things that she had to be with for engaging with her resistance the way she did, as courageously as she did. So there's the balance piece, there's a process piece, which is essentially we're tracking the sensations that are in you. And when you bring those two together, perspectives and tracking the emotions and sensations, and also working with core values like we would what we call fundamentals, it creates this powerful elixir of efficacy. And you know, for some of us, it works. It really works well. Any questions anymore?
The only thing I'd like to add to that is that when we talk about perspectives and we talk about goals and those sorts of things, they're yours. Yeah. And they're whatever they are for you. So it's not like a coach is trying to suggest you should have goals or different goals, etc. And that's where the coaching comes in, is to help you find, see, get clarity around what's important to you. There are times where you're in discomfort. The coach is there to be with you and to support you through that discomfort. Barry said it can be very challenging, it can be very emotional. I think Nova will also attest to the fact that when you're coming out the other side, there's some euphoria attached with it as well, because you can't believe what you've just experienced. Probably a good segue to get Nova down here.
Mm-hmm. I think Nova's going to speak to this, but this process can be a lot of fun. Like it doesn't have to be scary, and it doesn't have to be extremely hard work. But there's two things here for me. One is I believe coaching is taking the person to a place of choice. So right up to the edge. And once the person knows they're at the point of choice, I pour myself a glass of lemonade and I sit on the porch and I just sit there and wait, because there's nothing, my job is done. We're going to speak to that a little bit with Nova. So the coach doesn't do anything to the coachee, just provides this space and saboteur awareness, compassion, absolute compassion, and ferocity. I've had experiences where my saboteur got fired up. The coach's saboteur got fired up and was now coaching the coachee's saboteur. If you want to see a gong show, it's one saboteur coaching the other. It's crazy. And it happens. So the better we get at coaches, the more we can bring our people. So I think that's it.